Hi, I'm Neil at Italia Autos. Today I'm going to be talking about EGR valves fitted to mainly diesel engines on the Alfa Romeo 1.9 to 2.4. So let's talk about how they work and why they're there. The primary reason for fitting an EGR valve on cars is to reduce the emissions in a vehicle. Basically, the greenhouse gases that are produced by a diesel engine, they produce something called nitrous oxide gases, NOx gases are also called. Their primary function into reducing nitrous oxide gases is to reduce the combustion temperature, which therefore lowers the nitrous oxide gases which come out the exhaust. That's the EGR valve here, and let's just talk you around the system on this Alfa engine here. This is out of a 1.9 Alfa Romeo GT, 2007 year I do believe. As you can see, this is your turbo and your exhaust manifold is behind this cover here. The exhaust gases come out of the engine, are then cooled via the EGR cooler here, and they then come round out of the cooler back up to the EGR, which is right on the intake manifold. On the other side of the EGR cooler, the gases come out slightly cooled, back up to the intake manifold, where they are put back into the intake manifold and then back through the engine. EGR valves should only be working when a car is being driven. They do not open when a car is idling, or when a car is cold, or when a car is under hard acceleration. This is where you can notice the faults with an EGR valve. If your car doesn't start properly, or it's very smoky during hard acceleration, or it runs very rough when the vehicle's cold, or it runs very smoky when the vehicle's cold. It can be down to several things, but a lot of it comes down to the EGR. So let's remove this EGR valve and we'll see what condition it's in. This style of EGR valve has been used for many years throughout the Alfa range, fitted in the Alfa 156, 147, GT, 159 and Brera. Fitted in 1.9 form and 2.4 engines. They are generally quite reliable, but they do tend to block up if the vehicles aren't used for long durations on the motorway. This is looking from the back of the engine. I thought I'd do it on a vehicle which has had the engine removed, just to make it easier for you to see what's going on and how to remove things. So it's held on by 6 bolts, 4 10mm bolts at the front, 2 on top. You've got a seal here and a seal at the back. So when you do remove these, be very careful that you don't lose the seals down the back of the engine. So let's start by removing these 4 bolts at the back of the EGR valve. Right off the bat, somebody's had a problem with this EGR valve in the past because it's fitted with a restrictor plate. There's 2 ways you can sort of cure an EGR valve problem. Is either replace it and find the source of the problem, or bodge it and fit one of these restrictor plates or blanking plates. The blanking plates don't have any holes in. This is a restrictor plate because it just restricts the flow of gases through the EGR valve. Now onto the 2 bolts on top. Just grab that seal there. There's also one electrical connection to remove. You do find a lot of the times when you go to them, they've got a cable tie holding the connections on because they don't secure very well at all. Our valve consists of a valve, hence it's called an EGR valve, and a solenoid which operates the valve. And what you'll normally find is that this can get all clogged up with soot and carbon, and it will no longer operate, it will no longer open, or it will no longer close, or it will be stuck halfway in between, and that's when you can start to develop problems with it. This one is absolutely cream crackered because the end come off it when I was taking it off. As you can see, it's just an electromagnet inside there which operates via the ECU. Let's remove that off there. Now let's take this to a workbench and take it apart, and I can show you more of the EGR valve. Okay, now got the EGR valve on the bench. Let's just remove these 4 screws to separate the solenoid from the valve. I have already loosened them off. Okay, this is the solenoid removed. It is basically just an electromagnet which is operated by the ECU, which pushes a plunger out and in, just to operate the EGR valve, to open and close it. With this, the end can fall off. Doesn't happen very often, but it can. But they mainly either just stop working, or it gets too sooted up inside, so this no longer works. You can actually drill a hole in there, so then you can free up the plunger by just tapping inside. But the price of the EGR valves nowadays are not expensive, so I wouldn't really recommend you do that. This is the EGR valve itself, and that's where the solenoid attaches, and that's what the solenoid pushes down. It only moves about 1 centimetre. If you can see in there, if you can see that, I can't quite see that on camera here, so see what you can see. But yeah, that's what blocks up the inside there. It gets all sooted up, or it starts to seize, and it doesn't move very easily. You can clean these out. Do what I've done here. Soak it in some brake cleaner overnight normally, and then get a toothbrush in there, or a wire brush, and remove all the carbon from in there, and then get that freed up and get that moving again. And as long as your solenoid's working okay, your EGR valve should work okay then. And that's your EGR valve. Very simple, but can cause a lot of problems. So the symptoms of a faulty EGR valve, the valve can start to stick, as I've already said, and that can create bad starting when the vehicle's cold, excess smoke while the vehicle's running, excess smoke while you're trying to start the vehicle, loss of power when you're trying to accelerate hard, as well as excess smoke through the exhaust. So if you are suffering any of those problems, this is the easiest and simple fix to check. First of all, if you have got an engine warning light on the car. Another problem I'll talk about, which also relates to the EGR valve, on these modern Alfas, as I've done in another video, you have something called swirl flaps, and they also help to reduce the emissions on the vehicle, but they do tend to get sooted up just as the EGR valve would. The problems can be even worse, because if one of the swirl flaps comes off, it goes inside your engine, and then it will get chewed up by the pistons and the valves, and it can create a lot of damage to your engine. So I hope that's given you a better idea of the workings of an EGR valve and the common problems you can get with them on these Alfa engines. It's the first time I've done a guide like this, so let me know if you like it in the comments below and what I could do better. But thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.